Welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And since it is Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, it is time for our weekly joint live stream. So it is also Memorial Day in the United States. So it's a long weekend in the United States. And so it's a day of festivities, day of Americans getting around the barbecue, the president going to Arlington National Cemetery and making all kinds of.
But most Americans don't know what Memorial Day is anymore.
No, that's very true. So, how are you, Peter?
Well, Team Crosstalk is on vacation this week, so when they're on vacation, I'm de facto on vacation. So I have the week off, let my eye recover, and easy peasy. It's nice. It's warm.
All right. So you have the week off.
Yep. Well, I would go to work, but then there would be no one there to work with.
Yeah. But why is this a week off? I mean, what's so special about it? I mean, it's not Memorial Day in.
No. It because it's Maisky holidays. It's May holidays here. Okay. It's, we have what their version of Labor Day, and you have Dzień Pobiedy, Victory Day, and it's kind of collectively called the May holidays, and they're very elastic about when it begins and when it ends. Okay,
right.
This is kind of like a official, quasi-unofficial vacation period for Russians. Okay, and so. My team is partaking in that, and I mean, for me, it's just they just told me they told me last night we're taking next week off. I said, "Oh, okay, we're taking next week off." I never think in those terms. I'm not a vacation guy.
All right.
I'm just
all right. Yes. Yeah. That's it's always a culture shock when you leave the United States. That in most parts of the world, certainly in Europe. People take their vacations very seriously. It's a big thing, vacations, and they plan them and think about them and organize them. And a lot of logistics are involved. In the United States, people just don't take vacations. It's a work culture. It's very much about people showing up and staying late. I mean, that's
And how many of them don't have a living wage?
That's I think that's a different question. I mean, yes, what they get, what they get for it's a different question. But nonetheless, it is a work culture. People work. Things are open late. Here, boom. You miss the office hours. 5:30, you're done. I mean, you're gonna have.
Well, no, in Moscow, it's a city that doesn't sleep. It's pretty. I mean, if you want to be out at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, I think the last time I was out at that hour was 25 years ago, so I wouldn't know. But I hear that it's very vibrant. Okay, so.
Right. So the big news of the day is the angry outburst from President Trump yesterday against Russia and Putin. And this has caused a great deal of excitement in the media and among policymakers that finally, Trump is coming around. He's going to join us. He's going to do what's needed for Zelenskyy. He's going to do, in sanctions, arms, you name it. He's going to be there. So let's first of all take a look at what Trump said. First, what Trump said at his kind of impromptu news conference as he was getting on a plane in New Jersey. So here it is.
Innocent stuff by American standards. Let me take a look.
Can you provide us an update on Russia and Ukraine as well?
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him. but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
Mr. President, what do you want to do about
And I'm
that?
surprised. I'm very surprised. We'll see what we're going to do. What am I going to tell you? You're the fake news, aren't you? You're totally fake. All right, any other questions? I don't like what Putin is doing, not even a little bit. He's killing people. And something happened to this guy, and I don't like it.
Can I follow up on that? A Russian commander reportedly said that Putin was almost caught in the middle of a drone attack from Ukraine. So do you have any?
I haven't heard that, but maybe that would be a reason. I don't know, but I have not heard that.
Okay. Accepts acting chief of staff.
All right, and then he returns to it in a little bit. So let's see.
Pretty big on those low-income countries.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. We're not looking to make sneakers and T-shirts, and we want to make military equipment.
no,
we want to
listen.
make big things.
No, it's a little bit further on.
I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. I can tell you the Iran talks have been going very well.
You said you're
And I'd love that to happen because I'd love to see no bombs dropped and a lot of people dead. I really would like to see that happen. And I think there's a good chance that it could happen.
You mentioned you're unhappy with President Putin. You've talked before about putting more sanctions on Russia. Is that something you're considering more seriously?
Absolutely. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. I'm not happy about that. Go ahead. What else? Anything else?
All right. So that was him at this impromptu news conference. Of course, this has generated a lot of excitement. I personally do not think that one should take any of these things very seriously.
I agree, George. Again, everybody, George and I, we do this cold, okay? That's my reaction to.
Yes, that's right.
What is his reaction going to be tomorrow, George?
Yes.
I mean, when we're listening to that, where's the strategy? There's no strategy. Okay, this is reacting.
It's reactive, and that's why.
And he's reacting to extremely peppered questions. Okay, yeah, I mean, according to Russian media, at least, Putin's helicopter was swarmed. Okay, that was a big story here. Okay, but I don't see what is to react to. There's an ongoing military conflict going on. Okay.
There's ongoing military conflict, and there are presumably some ongoing negotiations. They're taking place. What stage they're in or whatever they're going on. We know that there's no ceasefire. Since there's no ceasefire, there's no point in talking about, oh, well, Putin did this on this and to react against it, particularly as there's no evidence that this is these missile and drone attacks were targeted at civilians, and in it, it's an obvious point, but we might as well make it. I notice, you don't get so emotional when civilians are getting killed in Gaza. Here, you're getting all emotional. Oh, wow, people are getting killed. I know, you don't care when people are getting killed in Gaza, and their civilians are getting killed.
Russian civilians are killed by Ukrainians using Western military technology. Nobody gets upset about that in Western media.
Right. But anyway, after he gave this this news conference, he took to Truth, and the thing about this Truth is that in part this was a response to Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy had sent out a tweet criticizing the United States for not speaking out on the Russian attacks on Ukraine. So here is first, I think the Zelenskyy tweet, and here it was a very lengthy, not tweet. Yes, it was tweet. Yeah. Each such terrorist Russian strike is a sufficient reason for new sanctions against Russia. Russia is dragging out this war, continues to kill every day. The world may go on a weekend break, but the war continues regardless of weekends and weekdays. This cannot be ignored. Silence of America, silence of others around the world only encourage Putin. And this was and then he goes on, without truly strong pressure on the Russian leadership, this brutality cannot be stopped. Sanctions will certainly help. Determination matters now. The determination of the United States, of European countries, and all those around who seek peace. The world knows all the weaknesses of the Russian economy. The war can be stopped, but only through the necessary force of pressure on Russia. Putin must be forced to think not about launching missiles, but about ending the war. But it was that comment about silence of America, silence of others around the world, only encourage Putin. That's what got Trump rather annoyed. And this is the truth that he sent out. This truth was after the that news conference. And he says, I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He has gone absolutely crazy. He is needlessly killing a lot of people. And I'm not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities, into Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. I've always said that he wants all of Ukraine, not just a piece of it. And maybe that's proving to be right. But if he does, it will lead to the downfall of Russia. Likewise, President Zelenskyy is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. Everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it, and it better stop. This is a war that would never have started if I were president. This is Zelensky's, Putin's, and Biden's war, not Trump's. I'm only helping to put out the big and ugly fires that have been started through gross incompetence and hatred. So that's what he sent out.
But should we be surprised? Because George, he has taken upon himself to be the mediator, which is a really weak position to take, because the United States is a co-belligerent on the side of Ukraine. So he wants to be above it. He wants to be above it. Hey, I brought you guys together. I took a phone call. You guys met in Istanbul. Get on with it. There's a fundamental strategic misunderstanding about what's going on. I'm sure Steve Witkoff takes relatively good notes. I mean, he's a very wealthy man. He didn't get rich by accident. He used his abilities. The conflict will continue until we have a peace, outline of a peace that both sides can adhere to. Okay, I'll take it back to Donald. Okay, Donald, they need a peace process, but the war is going to continue. It's not. He's not absorbing it.
Right. No, I think that's right. I mean, the Russians continue to speak very well of Trump. They will not be provoked into saying anything negative about Trump, and they are distinguishing Trump and the Trump administration from the Europeans, from from Zelenskyy and everybody else. So they accept, Trump, that he has good intentions. He's trying to bring this thing to an end. I mean, I take your point about the mediation, but as I've said, I don't think that's a deal breaker necessarily.
Oh, I don't either. This is not a
co-belligerent and a mediator. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
what I'm saying, it's taking the position as a mediator is a weak position. I'm not saying it's an insoluble position. Right. I'm not saying it's an impossible one. It's just that he's in a weakened position because we all know, because of the domestic political pressure, that if Trump just pulls the plug, he's going to have a lot of, even within his own, not with MAGA, but with the Republican establishment that still has enormous power. Okay, exactly. And that's the dilemma. You want to play the mediator. You're open to you weakened yourself. Okay. Yep. And so, I mean, you and I have gone over and over again what he probably should do to really be a mediator, but he doesn't seem to have any inclination to go there.
Well, I think. I agree. If he were just to pull the plug on Ukraine, there would be such an uproar in the United States, in Europe, he would have to back down. I mean,
Well,
almost
among the establishment media.
yeah, not against MAGA. MAGA would be happy, but there would be such a huge attack on him from within his party, all the Lindsey Grahams and the establishment and the media and Europe, that it would be just they would all pile on. It wouldn't actually accomplish anything, and he would have to back away. He would say, "Okay, I'm going to say," and he did that. I mean, clearly in the early days, he did. There's all the evidence that he did try to pull the plug, at least initially on Zelenskyy, and then he relented and then resumed. But he realized that the moment you do that, you come under a huge attack, and he doesn't have the weapons at this stage to fight back.
And it doesn't change the ultimate outcome of the conflict. So Trump would expend enormous political capital to get the same result. See, that's what he doesn't want to do. That's the ultimate lose-lose scenario.
Right. What I think he should be doing,
loses political capital, he would be weakened. He would be vulnerable, and it doesn't change what's going on.
Right. No, I think what I think he needs to be doing now. I mean, what I think is the optimal thing is to be laying the groundwork for eventually. In other words, eventually, I am going to apply pressure. In other words, there's going to be a moment that I'm going to go to Zelenskyy and say, you have to accept this deal, because if you don't accept this deal, then indeed everything, we're cutting you off completely. That's the moment that he has to do. He can't do it just now. He just can't just say, oh, well, hey, we're cutting you off. But once there's something like a deal on the table, that's the moment that you can apply the pressure.
One issue that makes George and I an oddity in this space is that we're pro-Nixon people, okay? And what Donald Trump has to do is tear a page from Richard Nixon's foreign policy, the Ukrainianization of the war, okay? That's and you just don't mention it. You pound away at it, okay? And these are the certain circumstances in which the United States is going to continue to support the regime in Kiev, but we will have to, through time, whatever time frame that is, we're going to have to withdraw and make sure that we can give them the best case we can, okay? And then I would apply something that George and I have said in the past, is that the previous administration, he won't talk about his, but let's leave that aside, decided to go toe-to-toe with a nuclear power. That's a no-no. That's one of the reasons why we've reached this deadlock, okay? He can, he read that speech in the Middle East. Somebody wrote some good stuff for him, okay? Get the same person on board, be articulate, and just pound away at it. The Ukrainianization of this conflict. Now, if the Europeans want to pick up the slack, that's a sovereign decision of Ukraine. But he has to. Where's the clarity of his strategic vision to resolve this problem? It doesn't exist, George.
No, that's
and he shouldn't be reacting every news cycle about what Putin did and what Zelenskyy did. Okay, it's when I started watching, because I hadn't seen it, it's just like, this is boring.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think the easiest thing for him to do, when they come along and ask him these questions, it's terrible. That's why I'm trying to bring it to an end. And, that's why I'm working around the clock, trying to bring them to an end. And then you can say, it's not my war. It's Zelensky's war. It's Putin's war, Biden's war. You can say that, but I'm trying to bring it to an end. Yeah, but what about, bombing? I know it's terrible what's going on. That's why it has to come to an end. And therefore, if you do that, and you start thinking in terms of what is the final outcome of a settlement, because that's the one that you're going to put your weight behind, because you're going to have to, there's going to be a point at which there'll be a settlement, and you're going to throw your weight behind the settlement, and that's when you apply the pressure.
And George,
kind of lay the groundwork for that.
Exactly. Instead of saying, reacting to the minutia of the moment, what Trump should say is that, no, I've got my eye on the end goal here.
Right.
I'm looking at the settlement.
Yep.
Okay. Obviously, the conflict is going on. That's something we want to come to an end. But I've got my focus at this point, where that's where the power of the United States and whatever, if he wants to evoke the North Atlantic or whatever alliance, that's where we weigh in. But we're not going to weigh in now. See, that's smart. That's smart politics and the smart policy.
No, I agree. And I think the reason why we do talk about Nixon was that, yeah, he began the Vietnamization of the war. And then as they moved toward the final settlement during the fall of 1972, they began putting pressure on Saigon. They knew Saigon is going to be really upset about this deal. They started putting pressure on them, and the pressure was quite brutal, which was, hey, if you don't agree to this, we're going to cut you off. I mean, if we cut you off, don't think Congress is going to pick up the slack. They hate you a lot more than we do. We're your best friends in Washington. And, Chu and the government in Saigon, they had to accept the deal. I mean, how much they hated it, they had to accept it. And of course, they applied pressure on the North as well. But that was the moment that once they had the outlines of the settlement, then they knew that's when you throw your weight behind it and start applying pressure on your ally. You've got to step up because otherwise we're cutting you off. That's what Trump should be doing. And
exactly, because I would say to him, if I were, is he getting on air? But do you like talking about this every day, Mr. President?
Right.
No, I know you don't. Okay,
right.
That's why there must be a strategic vision, not the reaction to the news cycle. See, and it's really kind of an interesting thing. I mean, if you look at the wide array of what the Trump administration is doing, almost on every single issue, the administration is 3 or 4 news cycles ahead of everybody else. Okay, because everybody's have to react to what his administration is doing. Not on this one. Right. He's always playing catch up, and that's his fault because he has people like Keith Kellogg there. I try to be charitable towards Witkoff. Okay, and then and Lindsey Graham sitting at the table.
Right.
I mean, where's your leadership, Mr. President? Where's your leadership?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good point. I think it's an excellent observation that on all the other issues, on immigration, on going after the law firms, on going after Harvard, they're way ahead of everyone else. Everyone's trying to
gallop. They're galloping.
What the hell are they doing? They're very smart. They're very smart people who are figuring this out. But here they just don't have in any kind of a that vision. Hey, we're moving several steps ahead of it, and you're right. Here they're reacting, and they're not doing it very well, because when you're reacting in this way, then people are concluding, hey, you don't have a strategy. You don't know what you're doing. You're just going, you say one thing one day, then you say the opposite the next. So
George, I bet the house on this. What is Trump doing by sending out these truths? Well, Zelenskyy is going to react. See, that's not what you want him to do. Right. You want him to start fulfilling your wishes, because I don't want to say strategy because it doesn't exist. But no, Zelenskyy, Trump has fallen into Trump is a master at controlling the narrative, the news cycle. But he's allowing Zelenskyy another opening. And George is absolutely right. The Russians are not going to say one bad word about Donald Trump.
No,
okay, and so we go into this kind of ping pong back and forth, which makes Trump look weak.
I think I agree. Anyway, after this truth, then we had some of the responses, which is Reuters, and of course they're very happy. And saying that, but here's the Russian response from Peskov. This is from Reuters. We are really grateful to the Americans and to President Trump personally for their assistance in organizing and launching this negotiation process. Of course, at the same time, this is a very crucial moment, which is associated, of course, with the emotional overload of everyone, absolutely, and with emotional reactions. So we understand, you've got a lot of things on your plate, and this is a very stressful time. You're getting a little emotional. And then this was from the BBC, because I think this is where it came from. Russia, there is emotional overload at this important moment. And it says, on today's Kremlin conference call, I asked Peskov how concerned he was by Donald Trump's criticism of the Russian president. including his comment that Putin has gone absolutely crazy with his continued attacks on Ukraine. Peskov replied, of course, the start of the negotiation process, for which the American side made a lot of effort, is a very important achievement. And we are truly grateful to the Americans and personally to President Trump for their help in organizing and launching this negotiation process. So, like what we were saying, not say anything negative. And then it's a very important achievement. Of course, at the same time, this is a very important moment which is connected to an emotional overload of everyone involved and emotional reactions. We carefully monitor all the reactions. However, President Putin takes those decisions which are necessary for the security of our country. We all witnessed how the Kiev regime threatened foreign leaders before they came to Moscow to commemorate Victory Day. Everyone heard those threats by the Kiev regime, and many leaders who were here witnessed attempts by the Kiev regime to strike Russian territory with drones, large cities, even the capital, on the eve of such an important days. These attempts continue. We are forced to take measures, and President Putin does what is necessary. So that was the response from that. And here's Macron. Yeah, sorry. Okay. All right.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to say something. All right. So let me just say then about Macron. And I don't know whether people saw. Did you see that his wife slapped him?
Yeah, that was sent to me about an hour ago.
Yes. Well, it looked kind of unfriendly. I mean, it wasn't exactly a slap. He would just pushed his face.
Well, I mean, if
he didn't realize that
if his wife actually. Yeah, but if his wife is actually a man, it could have hurt. Okay, it could have been some heft.
That could have been quite painful.
Could have been some heft. George and I are not weighing in on that issue.
No, we're not weighing in on that issue. But what is interesting is that initially they denied it. The French denied it. Then basically they had to say, well, it was a kind of a domestic tiff, and we'll come to that later. And Russia was somehow involved because it was Russia that put oxygen into the story, because of Russia that somehow, I mean, I think it was an AP that shot the footage, but I think RT, circulated the footage.
Well, okay, James H. I bumped into Rosenberg a couple of times. He refuses to talk to me. I asked him a question about something he reported, and he just got up and walked away. So I tried.
Right. Yes. Anyway, here's this was I think after the slap. Says Macron says Trump realizes Putin has lied about Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron has commented following U.S. President Donald Trump's latest rebuke of the Russian president. During a trip to Vietnam, he tells reporters Trump realizes Putin has lied to him on the war in Ukraine. He adds that he hopes Trump's anger at Putin will translate into action.
Yeah, well, I think most people would say, Macron, if you can't keep your family in order, I mean, maybe you should, stop opining on things that nobody really cares about what you think anymore. No one cares what the French president has to say on this issue, Ukraine, or anything else. Okay, I mean, this guy is already in the past, even though he's still in office. It's an amazing achievement on his part.
It is. I mean, he's going to be there. He's going to be there for another 2 years. It's hard to believe that two more years of irrelevance.
Well, it just shows that it just shows. I think this is a perfect example where if Macron suddenly disappeared, no one would notice.
You're right. None. Almost anybody can take his position, and everything would be exactly the same. I mean, like anybody, just pick up some random guy from the street and shove him into the Elysee Palace. Nothing would change.
I mean, I think Jill Biden has time on her hands. I mean, she probably would like that palace.
I think so. She lost that job. She was going to be president. She didn't get to be that president of the United States. So. And then TASS pointed out that the strikes on Ukraine come in response to enemy attacks on civilian facilities. And here we have Peskov saying Russia's armed forces have been delivering strikes on Ukrainian military facilities in response to Ukrainian attacks on Russian civilian infrastructure. We can see how the Ukrainians attack our social infrastructure facilities. These are retaliatory strikes on military facilities and military targets. And then,
well, George. I mean, this is TASS. George and I think it's the only Russian media outlet that we ever use. Okay, from time to time, the Kremlin website for a statement. Okay, but in the articles that you were looking at for our live stream here, did any of them, just one of them, say, while the Kremlin claims this was in retaliation, did not one say they could? I mean, it's in the ether that you can agree or you can disagree. That's fine, but there is a reaction. I mean, can you just say, "Well, the other side says this"? Viewer, reader beware. But they never even do that.
You're absolutely right, and that's extraordinary because everybody else, anyone who knows something about what's going on in Russia would know, hey, Ukrainians have been hitting us with drones, very heavy drone attacks, day after day.
George, that's what I wanted to say at one point. Everybody, this thing isn't working too well in the last few days. You know why? Because of Ukrainian drones.
Right. That's right. So all of that's never mentioned. And then out of the blue, it seems, the Russians have launched attacks against Ukraine. Oh, out of the blue. Completely, there was nothing ever happens before that. But that's the classic of war propaganda, which is you never report about antecedent event. You just focus on those events that you want to focus on. So therefore, we have the story of Russia's launch these attacks out of the blue, completely. Where did that all come from? And that's what TASS points out. Here we have. So on Sunday, Russia launched high-precision strikes on military facilities on Ukrainian soil following days of unprecedented massive drone attacks from Kiev. Among other things, Ukrainian defense plants that manufacture missile and drone components, as well as electronic intelligence and satellite communication centers, were targeted. And again, what doesn't come up in the media stories is that these are all legitimate targets. And the media don't really, they want to suggest, they're hitting civilians, but these are all legitimate military targets. I mean, they're hitting plants, factories, storage depots. These are all military targets. Obviously there are civilian casualties, but they're not targeted at civilians. The West chose to ignore Ukrainian attacks as it criticized the Russian retaliatory strikes instead. And the US President Donald Trump, for one, voiced his dissatisfaction with the Russian attacks and said that he's considering more sanctions on Russia.
Well, okay. But he was prompted.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, he was prompted. Are you going to see the media always is trying to escalate?
Yep,
is it for click value? Is it PMC mentality? You can take your choice. Okay, but he was prompted. It was of course I'm thinking about it. Okay,
yep, that's right. That's an excellent point. That's exactly what it is. And what I find odd, and I guess going back to what we were talking, is that why, and for a man who is as skilled as he is at the media, he's not able to answer the question as he should. Yeah, it's terrible. That's why I'm trying to bring it to an end. Instead of saying, he's gone crazy, and because now everyone's going to pick up on this. Hey, Trump has just called Putin crazy. Hey, maybe he's now going to introduce sanctions. Maybe that's going to be the media reaction, and that's not what you need to be doing. As I was saying earlier, you need to be thinking strategically, not have going on and on, day after day, week after day. When will Trump introduce sanctions? When will he introduce sanctions on Russia? When is he going to put pressure on Putin? He doesn't want to be getting involved in that debate. That's the wrong debate for him to be in.
I see a comment here from just a Maverick. Why are Russia's retaliatory strikes against facilities that should have already been blown up long ago? Everybody here asked the same question. Very fair question, okay? And I can tell you is that there's um, it's very, very complicated from Russia's point of view. The way it's been painted in the West is completely wrong. Russians don't have animus towards Ukrainians. They just don't. Now, against the Banderites and the Zelenskyy clique, yeah, there's animosity towards them. But as a people, no. And there's a pattern here, and George and I have talked and even argued about it for a long time, is that there's a restraint here. There's always a level of restraint. Because I've said from the very beginning, the Russians have eyes in the sky. They can see everything that's going on. Yeah, and so it's a fair question. Well, why is that facility still standing after all this time? It's a very fair question.
It is a very fair question because again, we're not talking about, hey, let's inflict pain on ordinary Ukrainians. Why aren't you hitting? Why haven't you hit legitimate military targets long ago? These are strategic targets. These are particularly plants where they're manufacturing drones. Why haven't they been destroyed? So it's a excellent question. So I want to segue into a very strange story. I don't know, Peter, where you picked up on this. In Britain, there have been these arson attacks on the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. Sir Keir.
And they do have people of interest now. They've identified.
They've arrested 3 people, and the 3 people.
And what nationality are they?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Their nationality is they're Ukrainian. 2 of them are Ukrainian nationals. One is a Romanian national born in Ukraine. In other words, he originates from Ukraine. He's one of those.
So I'm going to jump to the end. And whose fault is it?
Well, exactly. Whose fault is it? Now, the interesting thing is that when this story first broke, it looked like, well, maybe this is a politically motivated. And then, strangely enough, when these young men, the pictures of these young men appeared, these sort of very young, kind of, let's say, very, very good-looking young men pictures, and it turned out that 2 of the 3 were male models, then questions arose, is this really a politically motivated attack? Maybe because it's so strange that there may be some other more personal, emotional aspect to it. Let's just,
kind of a first world problem.
It's exactly because it doesn't sound like obviously this has something to do with the Ukraine war and everything. It doesn't really sound it. However, that doesn't mean that people are not spinning it in that way to try to essentially get people not to think about, I wonder why these 3 good-looking young men, 2 of whom are kind of male models, should be so agitated about Keir Starmer that they're setting, these arson attacks. So here, again, this is the BBC, and it says, Russia denies involvement in fires at homes linked to Starmer. So suddenly, how do we distract people? Well, we distract them by bringing up the subject of Russia. The Kremlin has rejected claims of potential Russian involvement in a.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, George. But wouldn't I mean, logically speaking, if Russia denies involvement, wouldn't that be like the last paragraph of the article, like telling us what happened,
right?
What the police say,
what
it may be some kind of description of the arrested individuals, and at the same time, Russia denies involvement in fires. Right. I mean, wouldn't that be the last part? Because if Russia's not involved, why is it the headline?
You're absolutely right, and you'd have to say that this is essentially a media interference campaign to get people to focus on one story rather than on another story. So you're suddenly bringing up Russia. Russia denies involvement, and you think, "Hey, I didn't know Russia was involved." I mean, but say, "Oh, they're denying it." But because otherwise, people are going to start wondering, why are these three young Ukrainian men involved in some attacks, arson attacks, against, and again, they're not attacks on the prime minister, the Downing Street, or any of his official residence, but homes that he had once lived in, but no longer lives there because now he lives in Downing Street. So it says, calling them ludicrous. It comes after media reports that UK security officials are investigating a potential link following 3 incidents earlier this month.
Yeah, but see, okay. As a consumer of news, what you just read, George, I have no idea what's going on.
No.
So what are the facts of the case?
Well, exactly, and that's why the whole thing becomes very confusing. Because one of the things you want to know is, why would anyone try to instigate an arson attack against the prime minister? What would be the point? And you want to know something like this, but there's curiously very little curiosity among the media. This is a very strange story. These 2 Ukrainian male models, and if you look at the pictures, they look kind of, whatever. Well,
maybe they've got
to the prime minister.
Got some daddy issues. Who knows?
Right. I mean, exactly.
UK is a very strange country. Okay,
it is, and Keir Starmer is
he's just a creep. Okay, that's all.
He's a creep. Yes, I think that's fair. Yes.
Creepy Kura. Okay, yeah,
that's right. It's like creepy Keir. Exactly.
Creepy. Okay.
And so here the blah blah, and then it goes on. In response, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Monday, London tends to suspect Russia of involvement in all the bad things happening in Great Britain. Well, that's putting it mildly. As a rule, all these suspicions are groundless and not backed up with any evidence.
Okay, all right, everybody. Let's just say, just for the sake of argument, these 3 were making a political statement. Towards what end? What's the statement?
Exactly.
What is?
That's. Yeah.
What was their goal? If in fact they perpetrated this arson, what to generate what attitude or create what fact on the ground? Right. I mean, blowing up a warehouse in Poland. I mean, why?
Like, what exactly? What are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah.
See, that's the point. That's the point with all of these stories about Russia's blowing up as warehouses, Russia's blowing up shopping centers. Russia attempted to assassinate the CEO of Rheinmetall. You think, why? What is the point of assassinating a CEO of Rheinmetall? If it succeeds, he's going to be replaced by another CEO. I mean, you're not going to accomplish anything by that. But
unless the CEO wanted to disappear.
Well, that's yes, indeed.
Look, because of the caliber of these stories, you really have to start thinking outside the box. I mean, towards what end? What are they trying to achieve?
Right.
Or because the warehouse in Poland wasn't up to snuff on regulations, it burns down.
Right.
And then you tell the insurance company, well, it was the Russians that did it. Okay.
Exactly. But that's the point, because of course, if it wasn't up to standards, then the insurance company says, well, we're off the hook. We're not going to pay you anything. So, if your plan is to get some insurance money, you have to actually show that you fulfilled all the regulations. All the fire codes and everything. You had to. If you hadn't bothered to do that, the insurance company isn't going to give you anything. So therefore, what's the best thing to do is say, it was the Russians what did it. Give us the insurance money. So there are all sorts of motivations that may be involved, but the media, with a staggering lack of any kind of curiosity, just simply accept all these official accounts and
George,
never really inquire further.
I still don't know anything about this story. What did these guys say?
Well,
Have they okay.
they haven't said anything. That's another way. That's exactly why.
We're going to get the script.
Exactly. And whatever happened to the Skripals? They just vanished into the ether. So it says here 3 men, 2 Ukrainian nationals, and a Romanian man. He's not a Romanian man. He's a Romanian, ethnic Romanian who was born in Ukraine. They're all from Ukraine. All 3 are from Ukraine. Have been charged as part of a police investigation into the attacks. Several UK newspapers have claimed MI5 is investigating the possibility the attacks were ordered by the Kremlin, citing unnamed Whitehall officials. So, I mean, if that's what MI5 is claiming, then that's a tall story. Last week, Ukrainian national Petro Pochnok, 34 from North London, was charged by the Metropolitan Police with conspiracy to commit arson with intent to endanger life. And 2 other men, Roman Lavrinovich, 21, and Stanislav Karpiuch, 26, have also been charged in connection with the fires. The 3 men, who have already appeared in court for initial hearings, have been remanded in custody until the next scheduled hearing at the Old Bailey on the 6th of June. And then here they tell us what happened. On the 8th of May, a car the Prime Minister had sold to a neighbor caught fire on the Kentish Town Street where he lived before moving to Downing Street. So car that he had sold to a neighbor, so whoever did it may well have just didn't know that he had sold the car. They just thought that was his car, which again suggests a strange familiarity with his activities. They know what street he lives on, what his car is, and so on.
Well, 3 days. Maybe one of the 3 had been in the car at one point.
Could be.
3
days later, firefighters dealt with a small fire at the front door of an Islington house where Sokir. So it's a small fire at the front door of an Islington house where Sokir lived during the 1990s, and which has since been converted into flats.
Okay, George, I'm sorry. I just don't want. I don't want to be a nuisance here. I mean, if you're going to commit an arson, what is a small fire?
I don't know what a small.
I mean, I want to commit a small arson.
Right. I don't know. I mean,
is that a thing? Small arson.
I mean,
I don't know. You can commit arson.
Arson is a serious thing. Yeah, that's a serious business. Yeah, I don't know what a small fire. I mean, like what you throw a match into a trash can, and then I guess that's a small fire. I mean, it could get big, but it's still a small fire.
Like, this is just nuisance stuff.
Yeah.
It's just nuisance.
Right. But what I find interesting again of the media is no one has asked Keir Starmer, so Keir, do you know any of these men? Just ask him a question. Do you know any of these men?
Have any of these men been in your car?
That's right. Yeah. But it's just unheard of to ask Sakir this obvious question. Do you know any of these men?
These 3 good-looking men.
These 2 male models. Do you know them? I mean, it's...
I could go on, but
that's right. But exactly. We're not suggesting anything. We just want to know. Do you know them? Have you ever met them?
Well, can we start? Do you know any male models?
do you know?
Let's work our way down, as it were.
And if so, how many male models do you know?
Strange country.
It is, and then it goes on. So this is the small fire. And then, but again, they said lived during the 1990s. How would anyone know where Sir Keir lived during the 1990s? That's already 30 years ago. So that's very strange that they would know where he lived 30 years ago. On the 12th of May, the fire brigade and police were called to a fire at the Prime Minister's private home on the same street as where the car fire took place. So Keir previously described the incidents as an attack on all of us, on democracy and the values that we stand for.
No,
Really?
it looks like somebody's pissed off with you.
Exactly. Really? It all sounds
I don't
personal.
think it has anything to do with democracy. Somebody's pissed, okay?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Downing Street and the Metropolitan Police have so far declined to comment on reports that a potential Russian involvement is being investigated. So this is a wonderful kind of let's sidetrack and talk about something ridiculous. Here's the Financial Times.
George, are they citizens of the UK or are they on visas?
They haven't said. That's a good question. They haven't said. Or maybe they said somewhere, but all the news stories that I've read, they say they're Ukrainian nationals. But that's a very good question. Exactly, how did they come to be living? Did they come over recently, or they've been?
Okay. That's again another sleight of hand and a diversion. I mean, what is their legal status in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not. That's a very good question. What is their legal status? Did they? But again, I mean, what's their legal status? How long have they been in the UK?
The benefits that Ukrainians have been afforded is being taken away, slice by slice. Right. That could be part of the mosaic here. Okay.
Good. Yeah, that's right. But if it's part of the mosaic, I don't understand why. Why do that? Why go against Starmer? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can see you might be upset about your benefits being cut off, but there are more logical targets that you.
Well, I mean, look. First and foremost, do these people know each other? Can we establish that?
That's really.
And I think that once that has been established, then you can go down different avenues of investigation. But do you know each other?
Well, that's right, and I think ultimately you would have to say, had it been in the United, had it been, let's say it was Trump, absolutely, he would be asked by the media, "Hey, Mr. President, do you know these young men? You know these people who are targeting your private homes you lived in years ago. Do you know them?" And then see what he says. But no one has asked Keir Starmer this rather obvious question. Then let him say no. Absolutely, I've never heard or seen any of these in my life.
You know what I'd do? I would say, Mr. Prime Minister, do you know these individuals? And by the way, where are the Skripals?
That's another thing.
Never have another chance to ask you. Okay.
But that's another thing that which is so striking on the British media scene, is no one asks political leaders just that question: where are the Skripals? Top secret security. We must protect them from the Russians and so on. But you say, yeah, but you can protect them from the Russians and still just give us an idea where they are. Can
you just tell us where they aren't?
Where they are. And we can even, you can protect their location and conduct an interview. I mean, the whole idea that somehow you can't protect them and conduct an interview.
There's something called the internet. I think you could use it.
I think you can. It's nice when you have such a tame media. Anyway, this is the Financial Times. UK investigates possible Russian involvement in Starmer arson attacks. It says counterterrorism police looking into fires at properties connected to Prime Minister keep open mind about motive.
Well, I think the only open mind is here.
But that in itself is very interesting. I mean, it says keep open mind. Now they've been in custody for a while. what have you found out? Have you talked to them? I mean, they're very young. They don't look like hardened criminals. I wouldn't have thought it'd be that difficult to extract from them a confession and explanation of why they did what they did. I mean, these aren't the most sophisticated people who know how to be obdurate in the face of
Well, and if you're trafficking in small arson, George, okay.
small arson.
I mean, so did you want to burn something down, or you wanted to get attention? Raising awareness about something. I mean, the small arson thing, I can't let that go.
I can't, but that's in a way. I mean, I would think it's be fairly straightforward to ask them. What is it? I mean, are you upset by what's going on in Ukraine? I mean, was that what you were trying to draw attention to, or whatever? Or do you know the prime minister? Have you ever met him? I mean, there are all sorts of questions you could ask.
Is there an outstanding invoice involved here?
That's right. Yeah. So it doesn't, to be honest, sound like they're exactly conducting a very energetic inquiry into what's going on, because they're keeping an open mind about the motive. It says here, British security officials are investigating whether Russia may be involved in 3 arson attacks on properties connected to Keir Starmer. And the attacks on the UK Prime Minister's family home in Kentish Town, North London, along with a car and a residential property that the Prime Minister previously owned, took place earlier this month. 2 Ukrainian men and a Romanian national have been charged with conspiracy to commit arson with intent to endanger life in connection with the fires. Police have said the trio conspired with others unknown. Others unknown. Okay.
So let's get 3 male models to commit arson. Yeah, this is
right.
Netflix would be interested in this. Let's see where it goes. Okay.
That's right.
I just find it hilarious. They're trying to determine if there was Russian involvement. There are 2 Ukrainians and Romanian.
That's right. So there's
born in Ukraine. Okay.
That's right. That's right. So essentially,
but it doesn't scream Ukraine, does it?
That's right. It doesn't scream Ukraine. That's right. So 3 Ukrainians essentially, and then they're saying with the Russia must be involved. Here says there that the senior Whitehall figures said UK officials are investigating whether actors in Russia may have recruited the trio accused of starting the fires. They said discussions are being held on how best to respond if that is the case. Why are they even talking about what if that is the case? Either you have evidence that is the case, or you don't. What purpose is served by these ridiculous hypotheticals?
Well, presumably the press is doing exactly what the security officials are. They have their end game, their end point, and they're trying to work towards it. Okay, right. There doesn't seem to be any kind of legitimate and authentic interest in what happened.
Right.
They have an end game in mind, and they need to work towards it. No matter if there's a fact pattern that would bring you there. Okay,
that's right.
This is really find me a man. What is it?
That's right. Show me the man. Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime.
There you go.
Yeah. And then prosecutor Sarah Przbilska has said in court that the alleged conspiracy is currently unexplained. Counterterrorism police leading the investigation are keeping an open mind about motive.
Okay. Let's solve this right now. Okay, George, send them a link. Let's get them on, and we'll do our own investigation. Doesn't look like anybody in the UK is doing anything. Number one, you know the guy. Have you ever met the guy? Okay,
right.
How did you know where he lived 30 years ago?
That's right.
Given your age, you didn't know him when he lived there. So why that? Yeah. And these unknown. I mean, presumably you were born in Ukraine, so I mean you obviously have a knowledge of Russian. Are the unknown people Russian, or are they on other non-Russian speaking
Right.
people? Were you
Right.
paid to do this?
That's
I'm sorry. I'm not Columbo.
that's exactly right, and that's why I said earlier. These don't look like hardened criminals. If you see the pictures of these three men, they look like what you would expect. What young male models to look like. It shouldn't be that difficult to conduct interviews with them, and they would pretty much tell you that very obvious question. Hey, this is where the prime minister lived 30 years ago. Why did you choose that?
Yeah.
Why did you go to this place in Kentish Town? I mean, what were you hoping to accomplish by first setting fire to this car, which he used to own, but he sold it to a next door neighbor, and then setting the small fire on this house in Kentish Town?
And have you ever met Macron's wife? What are your thoughts on that?
That's exactly.
Since we're trying to sell newspapers here. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing. When as we're reading this, it's striking that there doesn't seem to be a very energetic inquiry into this. Because on the face of it, it's a very strange story. 3 arson attacks on the prime minister. I mean, you'd think, hey, that's kind of a serious business.
Yeah, my gut tells me this is going to go into the Nord Stream file.
I think so too.
We'll never know.
I guess we'll never know.
And these 3 individuals, they were released by accident.
Yes.
Another investigation is involved. I wouldn't be surprised, George. Okay.
That's right. And then Starmer said the fires were an attack on all of us, on democracy and the values that we stand for. Somehow,
what does that have to do with a small fire?
Yeah, exactly. It sounds very hollow. I don't see this as an attack on democracy or anything else. And then Russia has ramped up a campaign of sabotage and violence across Europe over the past 18 months as Moscow's war against Ukraine has raged on and Western nations have squeezed the Russian economy with sanctions. The amazing thing is...
No, that was written months ago, years
that was
ago.
Written, yes.
That just didn't hold it. They hold that in reserve. Okay?
Exactly. It's part of the template. Like lawyers have a document. They already have the template drawn up. The point is about this talk about the campaign of sabotage is, how come you've never been able to present any evidence of this? I mean, arresting some people and say, yeah, I was hired by the Russian government and I did it on the orders of the Russian government. They've never done any of that. They just simply present this, the campaign of sabotage and violence.
Okay, look, all right, everybody, let's ask a very elementary. I just watched Sherlock and His Daughter, that series. It's quite good. I liked it, okay? Family viewing. But let's go back to the text. Russia is, go back, George.
Okay. Right.
No, allegedly Russia has. No, it's Russia has. Okay, right. But see, this is, by not putting alleged, it's a very damning sentence in the terms of logic. Right. Russia has ramped up a campaign of sabotage and violence across Europe over the last 18 months. Who has been prosecuted?
Right.
What you're creating this all pervasive surveillance state all across Europe.
Right.
And now we have ramped up.
That's right.
Well, what are you people doing? What are you spending? Why are you spending all this money on? Have you solved any of these? Any one? There's one been solved, George.
That's one of them. No, that's right. Because the police are too busy investigating Facebook posts. Knocking on the doors of people who put offensive Facebook posts about transgenders, rather than doing any investigating. But you're right. If you're going to make these kinds of claims, then you at least, give us this person, give us one person to say, I did it. I did it on the orders of the Russian government. I mean,
this is one version of Russiagate in Europe.
That's right.
When everything was said and done, there were very few Russians involved in Russiagate. Okay?
None. There were no Russians involved.
Yeah.
other than the Russians who just simply said, well, I kind of made it up, like Igor Danchenko. I just made it up, because from gossip I heard in the bar, and I just put it in, and they gave me money for it. And Western intelligence agencies have said in recent months that they have uncovered Russian plots.
No, they might have uncovered plots, but if there was a Russian plot, we would all know. It would be all over the media. We have the evidence. We have it. We finally have the smoking. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, please.
You're absolutely right. Russian plots. I mean, a plot to bomb airplanes. That's serious business. Burn down public buildings, sever transport links, and assassinate high-profile figures who support Ukraine in its defense against Putin's full-scale invasion. Now,
and there is ample evidence that the Ukrainian authorities, at the behest of the CIA, has been assassinating Russians in Russia.
Exactly. Those are the people who have been. I mean, what assassinations have there been? Well, we've known there were assassinations in Russia with, like Daria Dugina. You're going to say that wasn't an assassination? I mean, the CIA pretty much said, hey, this was the Ukrainians who did it. We didn't know. We had nothing to do with it. They're their own independent agents. But they pretty much, they told the New York Times, yeah, it was the Ukrainians who did it. And there have been a number of assassinations inside Russia. And the CIA, through the New York Times, has said, yeah, this was the Ukrainian intelligence service that was behind it. And then last week, we had a Ukrainian who had worked for Viktor Yanukovych assassinated absolutely in the streets of Madrid.
In broad daylight.
In broad daylight, just as he dropped off his son to a school. So, nice, killing him in front of his little boy. And what do you know? The Spanish police are baffled. We don't know who did it. We just simply don't know. And then they put out the story. The Spanish police put out the story saying, we think it was a gangland hit. It was a gangland hit.
Okay.
And what's interesting is you say something like that and people believe it. Oh, gangland. Oh,
no, when the facts as I came across them, and maybe I'll be proven wrong. That's okay with me. There were people in Kiev tying up loose ends already. That's my.
I think so.
No.
I mean, it's not. It's it's not that I for 1 minute believe it was a gangland hit. What I said people believe it is that people news consumers, if you tell them, oh, this guy worked for Yanukovych is corrupt and is pro-Russian, so therefore this guy who worked for Yanukovych who's corrupt or pro-Russian, he was killed in a gangland hit. Okay. Sounds plausible.
There's a lot of people in Spain that have a lot of animus towards Yanukovych. You know that, George. Okay.
That's right. But I absolutely agree with you that the tying up loose ends. I think Zelenskyy wants to make sure that there aren't any potential alternative leaders who are around who could form a post-Zelenskyy government.
God's words to George's ear. Couldn't have said it better.
That's right. No question. But again, what's interesting is the Spanish police are clearly, and they're not going to make any investigation. None. They're not going to make any effort. It's much like with the Starmer. No one seems to be exactly getting up armchairs to investigate.
I'm sure the NSA watches wire transfers and probably saying, well, that's interesting. All these wire transfers from Kiev to Spain.
Yes.
I wonder what's going on there. That's part
right.
of it too.
That's
part of it
too. Exactly. Now, this person, he worked for Yanukovych. Then he came back. He came back to Ukraine. Then he went to Vienna, and again he came back to Ukraine, and then he moved to Spain. So well, that's a convenient figure to get out of the way. But nonetheless, amazing lack of curiosity. I mean, just how much coverage did the media give to this clearly an assassination in broad daylight on the streets of Madrid.
But that's one of the reasons, what George said, when I said, tying up loose ends, this is another data point
Right.
that there are those people in power with enormous wealth in Kiev, connected to NATO, to the United States,
Right.
and they're covering their bets. Okay, George is absolutely right. What these people want is what they're envisioning is significant, massive, possibly violent political change at a certain point.
Yes.
I don't know when. We're not going to make predictions here, okay? But
Right.
they want to. The people in power want to limit the possibilities of other challenging power. You get rid of this guy, get this guy off the board. They want to make sure they can control it, okay? But when you're in that mindset, it's very it shows volatility, and when there's volatility, guys, the law of unintended consequences kicks in a big, nasty way.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Because this is because now who knows what's lying ahead. But if there is going to be some movement towards a settlement in Ukraine, then we know that the Americans really, Trump in particular, detest Zelensky. He's going to, when it comes to they say we can't have Zelensky continuing in power. They're going to be looking around for some government of national unity, and this person who seems to be, managed to stay on good terms with both sides, he'd be a kind of a natural to be in this.
And also, there obviously is an eye, what George just said here. Who are the individuals the Russians can work with?
Yeah.
Who are the individuals the Russians could? Because you have both sides. You have the conflict within the regime itself in Kiev, but then they're looking for, that's one of the reasons why Yulia Tymoshenko's name was mentioned. Remember a couple of months ago? Yeah. Absolutely non-starter, everybody. However, smart people say, but the Russians have dealt with her. They've talked to her. They've signed agreements with her.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Tymoshenko is someone that they were able to work with her back when she was prime minister. And so they absolutely could work with her. But yeah, that's a non-starter. I mean, she's yesterday's woman. I mean, that no one. I mean, she has no following.
Not to pat ourselves on the back, but I came across that story. I read a couple versions of it, and George and I have not talked about it before. This is the first time we've talked about it, and we came to the same, I think, basically common sense conclusions. You never get that in the media.
No,
you never get it. Even the Russia experts out there, which there are hardly any left. There are hardly any left.
Right.
Stephen Cohen was the last.
That's right. Because what they call now Russia experts are essentially journalists who had spent some time as correspondents in Russia, and they can be relied on to tell us, well,
and they cultivate. It's a mutual admiration society. You have self-hating Russian liberals, and they look for Rosenberg and all of that, and it's just so incestuous. Okay, right. I challenged. This is like 20 years ago now. I challenged the New York Times correspondent to her face. I said, you always mention the same people, the same type of people, and you never have an alternative point of view. You always have one point of view. Oh, I talked to Yulia and Svetlana in the park yesterday. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Well, you live in a luxurious apartment complex, and your Sveta and Yulia live there too. So you really have a wide, your tapestry is wide and colorful. No, it's not. You're talking to people that exactly agree with you. That's why you're talking to them.
That's right. That's right. And then you got and then you get your story out, and then opposition is mounting to whatever it is. Putin's now in a lot of trouble. And then what was the name of the one that God, what was not you? Not Julia Joffe. A classic. She's the expert on Russia. Always relied upon to be as negative and as hateful towards Russia as possible, and that's why she gets on television. Tell
And
us
and
why
and,
Putin is a
and
murderer.
don't be surprised, everybody. But her calling card was anti-Semitism in Russia.
Exactly. Intense. That's why I left Russia, because of anti-Semitism. Anyway, let's take a look at our locals page. These are the
We got a super chat there, George. You got to react to it.
yes. So we have our good friend Judy Hotchkiss. Thank you, Judy, as always, for your very interesting and insightful observations. And so Judy says, I've seen several media reports on Trump's press conference, but your report is the only one that included the reporter's question about an attempted hit against Putin's helicopter. And Trump's response was, maybe that's why he did it. Trump could identify with Putin on that one. Otherwise, he has a terrible time understanding military realities. Now, I think that's right. And I found it a little surprising that Trump would go out and make this statement, and he hadn't been told, he hadn't been briefed on that, hey, the Russians are saying that his helicopter had been attacked, and that therefore that's a serious business, because then they might think, hey, they were trying to assassinate Putin, and therefore the Russians would get very upset by it. So you think, well, why wasn't the American president actually informed about this, that, hey, the Russians may well see this as an assassination attempt against Putin.
Of course.
and therefore, they might react quite strongly.
Remember the MH17 incident where the civilian Malaysian airliner was shot down. There are many believe that it was targeted because Putin had flown in the same flight path just right before. And there are some people believe that was a targeted assassination attempt. Okay, I'm not saying it's true, but there's that. That's out there.
No, absolutely. So that's why it is a little surprising that he hadn't been briefed, and this is why there's a problem about Rubio being both Secretary of State and National Security. But you want to have a National Security Advisor who's precisely keeping track of latest developments. Hey, I've got the latest.
It's Chaz Friedman, which someone that I have so much respect for. I mean, and he is really advanced in age. Okay, and this guy is coherent as a man in his 40s. Okay, and he was up for a job. I think it was in the early Obama years, and he was nixed because of his skepticism about Israel. Trump needs somebody like that around him. Let Rubio. Who cares about Rubio? I mean, the guy is nauseating. Okay, but he needs someone that's just going to be a straight shooter and say, "Mr. President, did you know at the same time?"
Right.
Okay. I mean, there's talent out there. Just
that's right. That's right. And in fact, it was quite astonishing. I don't know who that reporter was who asked that question. So, well, the Russians are saying it was that they thought that this was Putin's helicopter had been targeted by the drones, and then Trump said, "Oh, I hadn't heard that." That could explain their response. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That could absolutely explain their response. And anyway, Judy, as always, thank you so much for your generosity and for always your really good observations. And then we have Judy goes on, says more than half of the Republicans in the Senate have signed on to Lindsey Graham's Russia sanctions bill. At the same time, they are taking up Trump's big, beautiful budget bill after it passed the House with just a 1-vote margin. Maybe after the Senate votes to pass the budget bill, Trump will be more independent of the likes of Lindsey Graham. I guess so. I mean, the latest numbers don't suggest that he has the votes in the Senate. I mean, I dare say they're going to have to tweak that bill. I mean, something's going to get passed, even if not this House version. I'm thinking more that Lindsey Graham, I think he has to be afraid of Trump. I really don't.
Exactly.
He's
Look,
really in a position to defy Trump on this.
what Lindsey Graham is doing is try to get lead a parade that is not his. Okay, he wants that kind of publicity. But when push comes to shove, do you think he's going to try to stare down Donald Trump? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think because Marjorie Taylor Greene's in the movement, they will ravage and savage him. Okay, remember during the campaign, everyone, Lindsey Graham in his own state, on the standing right next to Trump, got booed. Okay, so. This is much more of Lindsey Graham, for the arms manufacturers and all this kind of, deep state stuff. But, George and I have been watching that very closely. I think this is just, I think it's much more for show. I think it's performative because I think when push comes to shove, Donald Trump is going to tell him, we ain't playing golf anymore.
That's right. That's right. And I'm going to primary you. I am sure that there are many figures in South Carolina who would be hungry to challenge Lindsey Graham in the primaries. And once they had Trump's endorsement, they would get it. And I think Trump would really...
And that's real MAGA country, George.
It's MAGA country. And, they did this during his first term. They did tie his hands and they imposed the sanctions, even though Trump tried to veto it. But they overrode his veto. That was his first term. He is much more in command of the Republican Party than he was then. Yes, of course, you've got all the establishment Republicans in the Senate and so on, but they don't want to defy Trump. I mean, they just don't have the strength to defy him, and the way they did then, because back then they thought Trump is for the birds. He's not going to survive. He'll be impeached. He'll be thrown out. We can defy him, however much we want. I don't think they think that now. So I think that, I'm really thinking that he's just making these threats, I'm going to do this. And the European press, they're picking it up. And, he's now become kind of a bit of a celebrity in Europe.
Yeah, well, look what happened to Waltz. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that's right. I mean, so I think that they probably will pass something in the Senate. They have to. I mean, they have to have a bill. But ultimately, I don't really think Lindsey Graham has the political strength to go through with this. And again, there's the case of look what happened to Liz Cheney. She thought she was so powerful that she could defy Trump. So.
Yeah. She thought she was so smart that she could win as a Democrat.
Real Peter Nolan says that will be the slap heard around the world. The slap, I think, of Emmanuel Macron. So that's it.
And Europe wants a seat at the table, everyone.
It's gonna
really. I mean, these people. I've always thought of the last few decades that European politics is purely performative. I mean, am I being proven wrong now? I mean, that's all we get.
That's right. Yeah. That's the one other thing I'll just mention briefly is that the EU, which is as we discussed yesterday, they want to get Orban out. They're very anxious now, but there are forces within the EU that seem to want to pick a fight with Orban over the issue of LGBTQ plus rights, because as you know, Hungary has said we're not going to have any more of these LGBT parades that everyone has around the world. Russia doesn't have them anymore. Russia used to have them. They don't have them anymore. But anyway, Hungary has also now passed legislation that they're not going to have them anymore. And so we have this Valérie Ayer, and we talked about her. She's this Macron creature who got very involved in Romania, but now she's quite involved in Hungary. and she somehow urged the EU to do something about this ban on these parades. And so she's the president of the Renew Europe group. And then she goes on here, we have to do something about this law. It's and it says, according to the Renew group in the European Parliament, has been in the forefront of the fight to protect the rule of law, democracy. We cannot remain idle and watch the Orban government trample on democratic principles and fundamental rights time and time again, silencing minority voices and stifling diverse opinions. Now, the reason I bring this up is that she's trying to pressure Ursula von der Leyen to step in and do something about this on these LGBTQ rights. She's decided to hold back. Now, that's not because she suddenly said, well, I'm having second thoughts about LGBTQ. She says, hey, I don't want to give any ammunition to Orban, because if I step in and start raising this issue, he's going to use it against me.
You'll re-elect him.
Exactly. It'll help re-elect him, and so she's decided to, whether she decided this or somebody told her, hey, kind of don't do this. And then here's this Budapest Pride in order to halt the application. Therefore, this is this woman that's writing this and so on, and then this is again she's demanding this action from Ursula, and then here EU commissioners asked to skip Budapest Pride over fears of Orban backlash. This is from Euractiv. Ursula von der Leyen's office has recommended that her team of commissioners avoid attending a Pride march in Budapest next month in order not to provoke Viktor Orban's Hungarian government.
Oh, no, not to provoke his constituents.
That's right.
Not to provoke his government, no.
That's right, exactly. The Office of the Commission President has quietly informed those of the other commissioners that they should not travel to Budapest Pride on the 28th of June. Organizers plan to proceed with the event despite the Hungarian parliament adopting a law in mid-March that bans Pride marches. And then Ursula von der Leyen's cabinet has made it quite clear that it doesn't want to see anyone at the Pride. The commissioners don't want to get involved and create internal tensions. So
the EU doesn't want to cause internal tension, really. You can't make this stuff up.
That's right. But that's what they've been told. Hey, don't kind of give Orban this thing. Oh, hey, I'm defying the EU and they want to impose their LGBTQ values on Hungarians. We don't want him to do that. We don't want him to run the campaign. We want to have his opponent to be a kind of a moderate and a skeptic of LGBTQ values. So I think that's the reason why suddenly, here's this moment. She was, Ursula was told, hey, why don't you do something about, this LGBTQ pride? I think, I think I'll skip it. I think just an indication of just how seriously Brussels is taking this election next year. They're pulling out all the stops to make sure he loses.
That's right, because they're tying up loose ends as well. They want to be able to speak with one voice. They have to get rid of all these pesky, remote. Right. They got Romania nailed down. Now they got to do it in Hungary. Okay, right. And then Slovakia will be, left alone. Okay, it will cave too. These people are they're mercenaries. They're political mercenaries.
Absolutely. That's the goal. If they can get Orban out, if they can take him out, then Fico will be pretty easy. Fico without Orban is very vulnerable. Slovakia is a much smaller country, and he doesn't have anything like the weight, the gravitas, the reputation of Orban, the kind of international standing of Orban. So they feel if we can take him out, we succeeded in Romania, then Fico will be pretty easy. The last domino to fall. Anyway, Peter, do you have any last thoughts?
This was a real fun one. Again, everybody, George and I, this is like a cold call. We don't exchange notes in advance. Okay. I mean, George will tell me the basic outlines of what we're going to talk about. That's like 3 minutes before, 2 minutes before we start the live stream. George does a lot of work here, guys. George has a lot of work here.
Yeah.
So we like to make there's levity always part of this podcast, but George does the work. So that tip jar should be respected.
That's right, and that's exactly the position that the dogs take. And so they say, yeah, well, he likes to take the credit for the work. We do all the work. It's our labor. The sweat of our brow that does it. So if you have anything to donate, it would be much appreciated. So thank you very much, everybody who joined us. Thank you very much for your questions and your comments. Thank you above all for those who contributed to the tip jar for the dogs. And we will be back next Monday for a joint live stream, and then tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, for my solo. See you then. All the best. Bye-bye.